This is the Better Life Podcast with your co-host, Cam Cathcart. Brandon couldn't make it today. He said he was sick and couldn't get out of bed. Meanwhile, our guest who we're interviewing, he wakes up every day at 4 a.m. I honestly think Brandon just has a little case of the man flu. We'll start a GoFundMe or something. But for real, this episode is incredible. Today, I'm talking with a guy who has been called the most disciplined man in the world. He's written multiple books around that topic. But this isn't just a podcast about cold showers, biohacking, and waking up at 4 a.m. No, Craig, he used to struggle with anxiety and burnout. And he didn't just overcome that, he built an empire around that and from that. We're going to get into today how he took control of his life, not by grinding harder, but by building systems that actually gave him peace and freedom. We talked today a little bit about the difference between changing your habits versus changing your actual identity. We talk about why most people fail at discipline and how you can fix that. And we talk about what structure in life really looks like if you want to succeed in your business and you want to still have a life. So if you've ever felt stuck, if you ever felt scattered, if you ever felt like your goals are running away from you faster than you can chase them, this is your episode. So let's get into it today with Craig Valentine. Welcome to the Better Life Podcast. I am here with Craig. And Craig, I know you as the world's most disciplined man. I've been a big fan of yours. I've actually, what's crazy is I just finished reading your book, The Perfect Week Formula. And one thing that I definitely want to talk about, because it changed my life, was the Daily Time Journal, which I'm actually open to that right now. I want to talk about that at some point today. But I know you as the author of multiple amazing books, The Perfect Day Formula, The Perfect Week Formula, Unstoppable, and then your new book, The Dark Side of Discipline. And so I'm excited to chat about that. I know you as running multiple seven-figure businesses and starting in the fitness industry and then moving to this leadership coaching and entrepreneurship coaching. And so I know you as that, but I want to get to know you a little bit better. And so tell me, before all of that, who was Craig Valentine?
Yeah, so Craig Valentine grew up, I'll refer to myself in the third person. No, I
love it.
I grew up in a small town called Stratford, Ontario, Canada, which is near Toronto. And where I'm from, you play hockey and drink beer and play hockey. It doesn't matter which order you do it in. And I grew up on the farm there. I kind of came from not too much. And, I joke about the drinking beer and playing hockey thing, but actually those were two very important activities in pivotal activities for me breaking into business, but also breaking down from business, which I'll share in a second. So I went to university, and that's what we call it here in Canada. We call it university, not college. I went to university because my goal was to be a strength and conditioning coach in the National Hockey League. And I remember when one of my advisors told me that the strength and conditioning coach at Michigan State makes $100,000 a year. And my mind was blown. Oh my God, if I could just make $100,000 a year, my life would be amazing, right? Maybe back in 1999, that was actually something, but not now. And so what actually ended up happening, Cameron, is that I have generally introverted tendencies, and to be a strength coach, you have to have great energy, and it just drained me to be on the personal training floor. I did go into personal training in Toronto, and I was a trainer to Canada's richest people. David Thompson, who is Canada's richest billionaire. I trained these people and I learned a lot from them. But at the same time, something happened that allowed me to escape from that, and I got critical credibility. And this is a huge, huge lesson for people in the entrepreneurship world. I was a personal trainer who was writing an email newsletter, and I sent it to the editor of Men's Health magazine, and they put me in the magazine. And that was the critical credibility, which I used as a crowbar to then open up opportunities, to open doors, because I was, hiding behind my computer, writing these email newsletters, and I was connecting with big names in the fitness industry. They were spreading my name. I was getting more people back to my email list, and I started selling my workout programs. And so I've sold workout programs longer than some of your listeners, your younger listeners, may have been alive. My first sale was January 28th, 2001. Not that I'm counting.
So
right.
You were like on the cutting edge of that.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no clue. I sold a Word document through PayPal. I didn't have a website, and I didn't even sell a PDF. I sold a Word document. And it was like for $60 American, and I'm Canadian. So back then, just like it is now, the US dollar was so strong, the Canadian dollar was so weak. It was like $300, man. And I was through the roof and, to the moon. And so I kept on going with that. And I built this online fitness business, and it was called Turbulence Training. And, hopefully some listener out there goes, I remember that program, or they read one of my articles in Men's Health magazine. But then right when I was in the best shape of my life, when I hired my first business coach who helped me have a huge business, online product launch, I actually had these anxiety attacks that sent me to the emergency room twice, not just once, but twice. And it was over 6 months in the beginning of 2006. And it was because I was a stupid idiot, not because there was like, some woe is me tale. No, I was a hypocritical personal trainer who was a binge drinker on the weekend. Going back to my younger years when I was a teenager playing hockey and drinking beer, it stayed with me for too long. And so I was this binge drinking personal trainer, and that misalignment, as everyone who's listening to this has some misalignment in their life where they're not performing up at their highest level, that eats you up inside. And combined with the introverted tendencies and not using techniques like journaling and proper breath work and all that type of stuff, it's like when you squish something down, man, does it ever explode back up? So it exploded up on me, and I went to the emergency room thinking I was having a heart attack. That's what it felt like. And the one was 6 weeks long, 24 hours a day, tingling from the top of my head to the end of my fingertips, tight chest. I couldn't breathe, elevated heart rate, couldn't concentrate. And it was really, really tough. So what I did was, just like a good real estate investor, I turned over every rock to solve my problem. That's what I did. I tried Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, all these things. I didn't like them, but I knew that they had to be done in order for me to escape it. And so I escaped anxiety. I wrote a book about it called Unstoppable for the entrepreneur who suffers from it. Because after I started speaking about this, I started getting messages at 2:00 on a Sunday morning, from people in the ER saying, I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and it felt like there was a refrigerator on my chest, because they had all, the weight of the world, as us entrepreneurs do, and parents do, and, busy corporate people do. Like, listen, I'm not saying these, anxieties only for entrepreneurs. In fact, it's worse than ever for, it's 40 million Americans. It's one of the worst conditions that our teenagers are going through. And it's because there's so much comparison syndrome. There's, not enough time stepping back and thinking and self-reflecting, and, everybody's over caffeinated. And let me tell you that definitely contributes to it. Because I remember when I was in high school, if somebody drank a coffee, they were like, whoa, man, that person's like, so risky, because they're like having a coffee. Now you see like a kid walking down the street chugging a Monster, and a Monster is full of 200 milligrams of caffeine, which is, back in the day, you weren't getting that from a coffee. So, all these things combined, let me just tell anybody out there, if you're struggling with anxiety, I just want you to know that there's hope, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You can get through to the other side. And when you get through to the other side and you have the tools, in your toolbox, you'll get to a point where you never have to deal with it again. So I want you to know that. I want your kids to know that. And, if it would be helpful, they can read that book. So that's who I was, but, before I wrote the Perfect Day Formula. I guess I should end by saying I did the fitness thing from 2000 to 2015. Got tired of it, man. Got tired of trying to keep up with all the people making false promises. And I decided to exit that industry. Along the way, I'd started coaching a bunch of entrepreneurs how to start online, how to be more productive. Kind of became my famous thing, which is why people call me disciplined. Being productive means you must be disciplined, but it's really about systems, which we can talk about. And then I switched over to coaching. I shut down a $5.5 million fitness business, which was painful 2016, but I was tired of it. And I wanted to live a life of more mental freedom. And so then I wrote Perfect Day Formula. In 2018, I wrote Unstoppable. In 2019, I wrote Perfect Week Formula. Then we got so busy with coaching that I didn't write another book until Dark Side of Discipline this year.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I want to camp on the anxiety piece for a second, because one, I've had anxiety attacks. I've been in the hospital before with anxiety attacks. They're the worst thing ever. And I want to chat about how you got out of that. Because for me, what happened, and it was a year and a half long process of my life. It was in my early 20s. And I was so paralyzed with anxiety, with pain. I was like, I was scared to go out into public because, like you said, the tingling feeling or this disassociation feeling. And I was so paralyzed that I couldn't even be disciplined to pull myself out of it. Does that make sense at all? And
totally.
How does somebody that's in that, like, I think it's just so paralyzing. I talk to people all the time where it's like, I know what I have to do. I just don't have the ability to do those. Like, I know I should be outside, I should work out, I should eat healthy, but I just want to lay in bed and watch Netflix all day.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll do my personal story about how I did it. There's work involved. Let's be honest. Nobody's going to get out of it by lying in bed watching Netflix, but there's work. There's, some things that are enjoyable, and, we'll figure out a way. So what I experienced, my first one was 2006 on New Year's Day, because it was related to like exhaustion from drinking and partying over the holidays and getting up early to be a personal trainer. And then, a bender on New Year's Eve, and my body was physically exhausted. And so I had an 11-hour anxiety attack, went to the emergency room, and, the nurse was like patting my head, and, when they told me everything's fine, that was really helpful to me. So I think one of the first things that people can do is go to the doctor. Just go to the doctor and get that reassurance from them, because there were multiple times, when I had my second anxiety attack, I went to the ER and they gave me a heart rate monitor. They sent me home. I dropped it off the next day after 24 hours. They said, hey, we'll call you. They also gave me a chest x-ray. We'll call you if there's anything wrong. And I just like, in the next 24 hours, and I just like counted down those 24 hours. And I'm like, man, and all of a sudden when it clicked through the 24th hour, I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. And that same day, I read a book called Panic Away, which was a very popular ebook in the early 2000s. And I only made it to the start of chapter 2. And there were 5 words, the very first line of chapter 2, that said, there's nothing wrong with you. And as soon as I read that, I swear the weight of the world just lifted off my shoulders. And so knowing, I wouldn't say I'm a hypochondriac, but, sometimes I can invent stories in my head about certain, things. And that just really, really set me free, knowing that there was nothing physically wrong with me, because I have a master's degree in exercise physiology. I've done high level cardiovascular classes and, sat through, cardiovascular surgery and all this type of stuff. And so I know the body very well. And I just thought there was something wrong physically with me. So when I learned there was nothing wrong physically with me, for some reason, to me, that just, was freedom. And then it was like, oh, well, then clearly I've got some habits and stuff that I need to fix. And so one of the things that I find people with anxiety have is that they're very overwhelmed. And you can be overwhelmed physically from exhaustion, from too much caffeine. Drugs and alcohol obviously are a huge contributor. So those things have to go. And, you don't have to quit them all overnight, because you're probably going to have a very hard time with that, but you need to dial them back, to the lowest level that you can get them to, and not use them as a crutch. I never used medications. I was never going to go to the doctor and get medications, no matter how hard it got. And it got hard. But I was committed to that. And then the other thing, I found exercise very difficult to do, because you would go to the gym and you couldn't concentrate on it, because you're like, oh man, I don't want to work out too hard in case I really do have a heart attack. And that type of stuff would get to you. And then also I remember going to the gym and talking to this guy who said, oh yeah, I was out partying the other day with some guy, and he like did way too many drugs, and he had a mini heart attack. And then like for that set me off for another 2 weeks, thinking I was going to have a heart attack, because, and it can really mess with your mind. And so I think what we need is we need to get outside of our own heads. There were little wins that I would find, Cameron, like, I used to, when Twitter started in 2007, I had an account, and I would find, like, if somebody asked me a question on Twitter, because I was back in my fitness days, and I spent like a minute answering, I would feel good. And I was like, all right. And then I kind of came to the idea that you can't be generous and anxious at the same time. You can't be generous and anxious at the same time. It's just like, you can't have a scarcity mindset when you have a lot of abundance and gratitude. They're just incompatible. So I just tried to help as many people as I could. And a lot of it was from behind the computer, and I was fortunate that way. But getting outside of my own head that way, and I'm not worrying about myself, I'm worrying about your problems. And when I worry about your problems, the anxiety goes away inside of me. Likewise, as an introverted type of person, I don't call myself an introvert anymore. I find that's a label and doesn't really serve me, but I have introverted tendencies for sure. And that means I keep all the thoughts up in my head. And you can, anybody who's done real estate investing has probably anybody who has a garage, knows what a garage can get cluttered up, right? And your brain is your garage, and, it needs a spring cleaning. And if you keep all your thoughts and emotions inside and you never tell anybody, again, that stuff explodes. So journaling, talk therapy, for me, becoming a writer and writing books and writing daily essays to an email list and writing about this were my form of therapy.
Yeah.
And for me, that was huge. And so I actually have a gratitude journal that we created that I used for a few years. I don't use it anymore, but I pray my gratitude prayers every morning. So, I still have a lot of gratitude, but that journal did help me through a time because it reminded me of how many great people I had in my life. And so I think the key message is get outside of your own head. You do have to take care of yourself physically. You have to remove the, toxic temptations. They got to go. You have to put as much, exercise and good nutrition and water into your life as you can. And I understand it can be crippling when you have anxiety to do that, but every single day you have to try and do it. And you have to figure out some systems because your discipline and willpower will only get you so far, but you need to have systems and you need to, like, even if it's like just sending a message to your mom and saying, hey, listen, yeah, I drank my 3 liters of water per day, or, your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, somebody, you need accountability because that's a secret ingredient to success. When, you tell somebody you're going to do something and you don't want to let them down, you'll do it. Even if it's like the last minute, you'll still get it done. So that's key. And then flipping around on the mental side is you have to get out of your own head. You have to serve others and you have to focus on solving their problems. And then you have to do journaling or writing or talk therapy. I think those are the things that if you can commit to those, you will turn the ship around. And then, for some of you out there, you got a little ship that you're going to turn around. And for some of you, it's Queen Mary you got to turn around. You can't turn that thing around overnight, but you can.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think for me getting out of it, there was a couple of things. One was realizing like this is normal in a way. Like I was scared to talk about it because I was a college football player and, I have everything together from the outside looking in.
Sure,
and so
me
all
too.
of a sudden I'm having these anxiety attacks and literally I'm curled up in the fetal position, crying myself to sleep at night. And I'm like, I don't want to tell people about this. And it was so freeing when I started talking about it to realize that there's so many people that have been in that same position because I thought I was all alone in it. And that was so helpful to know, like, this is, I wouldn't say normal, but this is common. Like other people struggle with this.
40 million Americans.
Yeah.
Like that's more than 1 out of 10 people. So it is a lot. And I'm like you, like when I started writing about it, the people that came out of the woodwork and raised their hand, like guys who are making, who are worth over $100 million would message me, like one of my mentors, and he'd be like, oh yeah, I have, dealt with all those things. And, he dealt with it the old white guy way, probably by drinking more, but, people have it, my friend Bedros Keuilian, who's built multiple, 8-figure businesses, had it. And, it's a thing that when you push too hard, it's like, people who like cars, if you redline a car for too long, you're going to end up with some problems in it. And it's the same with ourselves, our bodies. If you redline it too much, I will say this, that, anxiety, everybody can overcome this. There's nobody who has so much anxiety that they can't overcome it. But it takes work. But one day, I hope you will be like me. And I laugh at anxiety. I laugh at it. And I could chug 2 monsters. I could shotgun 2 monsters. I could have the worst news in the world. I could have all the pressure in the world on me. And I wouldn't have anxiety because I have tools to overcome it. And I just want everybody to know that's the attitude you should have it. I wrote in my book, don't let anxiety attack you. You need to attack the anxiety. Go on the offensive. Don't be defensive about it because you'll get rid of it when you get offensive.
Yeah. See, that's so good. And it reminds me of just talking to anybody that's listening that has this, because there's going to be thousands of people that listen to this like, oh, I'm in that season right now. I know it. And especially if 1 out of every 10 people have it, there's going to be, 5 to 10,000 people that are listening to this that have that.
Or their kids, right?
Or their kids. And one of the things that that helped me so much was I listened to a sermon actually while I was going through it. And the title of the sermon was Your Pain Becomes Your Platform. And I remember listening to that. And at the time I didn't understand exactly what they were talking about, where it's like, I'm in this immense pain and hurt and don't feel like there's any way out. I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. But I trusted that there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. And that happened in my early 20s. And then I actually was a youth pastor for a while. And Um, and there was one night at about 2 o'clock in the morning where I got a call from one of my youth students who was holding a gun and was
Mm.
like, "Hey, I've got this immense anxiety. Um, and I'm going to end my life." And I was able to go over and talk with him because back up there was a point where I was ready. I was ready.
I get it.
I didn't see a way out, and I was able I'd come out of it, and I was able to sit there and talk him through that, and end up getting him to the hospital, and he's thriving today. And
Mm.
and I look back at that, and I'm like, I wouldn't change having anxiety to this day because of that one moment. And I think a lot of people need to realize that, like, this also, not only it is a terrible time, and I don't want anybody to go through it, but you can use that for bettering the world, that struggle.
That's a
So
beautiful
important to remember.
story. And
Yeah.
and I agree 100% with what you said there, that, I went through it. I
Yeah.
can't change past. And I hope that, this podcast and the, literal over 1,000 podcasts where I've, been on
Mhm.
and talked about the story in the book and the tools, and then therefore, somebody else has taken it and, shared their story, because, we got a lot
Yeah.
of people to help. But,
Yeah.
the bottom line is that Cameron and I want you to know that there's a way out,
Yeah. I love that.
a good way
Yeah.
out.
I mean, without it, that you wouldn't have written your book,
No.
and so it's amazing. So I do want to shift gears
And
a
I wouldn't
little
have bought
bit.
my dog
Yeah.
and my,
Yeah.
like I was doing everything. I was buying dogs, trying,
Oh,
I just
I
pet the
love
dog.
it.
Hopefully it'll go away.
Yeah.
Didn't. It made it worse.
Um, uh, so I want to shift gears a little bit to getting out of that, because now you have been called the world's most disciplined man.
Sure.
That is a nickname of yours, and so obviously that was a huge turning point. And beforehand, I mean, you were running your business and it was really successful, so you obviously had some discipline in that, but you had to create systems and structure around your life as you were going through that. And can you talk about how discipline and systems and structure pulled you out of that breaking down point?
Yeah, absolutely. Discipline can be your savior to a point. And it was for me in the binge drinking, and it was for me in the anxiety, and it was for me in the introverted tendencies and stuff like that. But when people talk about discipline, if they were to personify discipline, it's going to be some guy with a beard, kind of looking like
Yeah.
Brandon, some guy with a beard, tattoos on his chest, bursting out of an ice bath with an axe in their hand. But that's not discipline, because that's really like that white knuckling willpower approach to life. And what good discipline is building systems that
Mhm.
make everything, fail proof, essentially. And when you build enough systems, people start calling you the world's most disciplined person. I'm not, it's offensive to like people like David Goggins or, some Navy SEAL or something who's, truly disciplined, or a single mom of 4 kids, that's discipline. Um, I'm a very productive person. I'm a very productive person because after those anxiety attacks, I remember about a year after, I was waking up and I was just like, man, it's just uneasy still. What is this? But I was waking up at 7:30 in the morning, which to me is late because I'm a morning person, right? I want to
Mhm.
do 51 things before noon, and then I want noon to 6 p.m. to just go away. I don't like
Yeah.
the afternoon. So I want to do a million things in the morning. So I'm waking up at 7:30. That's late. And I'm feeling the uneasiness, again, the misalignment. And then what I was doing was I was rolling over and I was looking at my BlackBerry. So there's a throwback for you.
Mm.
It's 2007. I'm rolling over in bed, checking my BlackBerry. And there was a day where I had enough. And I said, okay, tomorrow. And again, this goes back to what I said about, cutting back. You're not going to do it overnight, go cold turkey. I said, tomorrow I'm going to get up at 7:25 a.m. and I'm not going to check my phone until 7:35 a.m. And I'm going to do that for 7 days straight to prove to myself I can do it, to build confidence. And where I see a lot of people kind of go wrong in this, discipline, hardcore, doing hard things world is, 5 a.m. club world, is they're going from 8 a.m. to 5 a.m. overnight.
Mhm.
And it's not going to work. It's not going to stick. And, you might be able to do it for 30 days in a challenge or whatever. But after that challenge is over, you're just going to rebound and binge, like
Yeah.
after doing a 14-day fast or something like that. And so, a 14-day hardcore diet. So I did that for 7 days. And then I went 5 more minutes on each side for another 7 days. And after a few months, I was at 5:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. I had 4 hours in the morning. And that was like one of the greatest shifts of my life. I was massively productive. I was writing for multiple online newsletters, some that I owned and some were other people. And that's where people started saying, you're so productive. You must be the world's most disciplined man. And then that kind of shtick kind of kept with me. And, I'm not going to push it away because it's, it gets good attention, but that was the thing. It was just a system. And I was telling people, because part of the system that you have to have is that connection, that accountability. And accountability, whether it's to an individual that you deeply do not want to disappoint, which changed my life when I got, when I became friends with and hired as a coach, this guy, Bedros Koulian, who you guys should definitely have on the show one time.
Okay.
And when I got him as an accountability partner, he was the big brother I never had. And so I looked up to him, and there was like, no way I'm going to disappoint this guy. So if I told him like, oh yeah, I'll have, this project done for our mastermind group, by Friday, the 20th. And I'm like, oh man, that's huge. I would find a way to do it because I didn't want to disappoint him. Likewise, you can be in a community of like-minded people. And if you stand up in front of them and say, hey, by May 31st, I'm going to have my first real estate deal done. Man, that you're a burn the boats moment right there, because these people, if you have any level of integrity, you do not want to be a hypocrite in front of these people. And like, you might not have any idea on how to do this, but you've stood up and you've said it, and now your brain forces you to follow through. But that's what's missing from most people's lives. If they want to be more productive, if they want to be more disciplined, if they want to lose weight, change their health, write their first book, do their first deal, do their 100th deal, do their biggest deal, it's because they have these goals and they're inside of them. But if you're the only person that knows, you're the easiest person to let down. That's what happens on New Year's Day every single day. You got to stand up, you got to burn the boats, and you got to tell somebody that you deeply do not want to disappoint, whether it's an individual or a group. And so for me, when I started making my shifts, I was writing about it. And, when I talk about anything on these podcasts, it further cements my identity and my standards and my structure, because I can't go on the show and tell thousands of people that I do X, Y, Z, ABC, and then not do it, because that would eat me up inside, because it would be an attack on my integrity. And so those are the tools and systems you have to leverage, and you can change anything. You can move any mountain in your life when you do that.
That's so good. So how would you tell somebody, and I'm asking for myself, I was going to act like it was for somebody that's listening to this. Right? So yeah, asking for myself. So like, I know so many people, myself included, that we can be disciplined for a month. I mean, this is my life, where it's like, oh, work is challenging right now, so I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. I'm going to bust this out, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Or, hey, I want to get healthy, and so I'm going to go on the count my macros and work out every single day. And I can do it for a month, but I'm 100% all in or 100% all out type of guy. And I get burnt out. And so how do you fight against burnout when it comes to discipline?
It's a great question. And there's a lot of ways to look at this, but I think one of the most important things is that you got to tell me there's areas in your life where you haven't burnt out, husband, father, real estate investor. Like, there are areas where you have shown consistency.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I would say being a father, being a husband, being a friend. And then obviously, like, our business is going great, but there's times where I'm like 70-hour weeks in the business, and there's times where like I don't even want to think about my business.
Right. But there's consistency there. And
consistency,
so we have proven, it's just like the person who says, I can never get up on time. Well, you made it to that 6 a.m. flight to, the Caribbean. You can get up on time. You just need a reason why to get up on time. Yeah. And so that's where I start with people. When somebody wants to be more disciplined, the general person becomes reactive, opens up their Instagram and looks at whatever the flavor of the week is, right? Whether it's cold plunging, whether it's a 7-day fast, green juice diet, what's the new trend that shows that I'm disciplined? It's all garbage, right? Because it's just you chasing someone else's definition of discipline. And that's like you chasing someone else's dreams. And we know that that's not the right way to go. So what you need to do is you need to step back. You need to be less reactive and more proactive. And I take people through 3 steps on this. First, we got to figure out your big why. What are you doing all of this for? Because now you can run every decision through a filter of like, my big why is everything for my family. And so therefore, every decision I make, I can run it through. Is this serving my family? If it's not, then I can say no to it. If it is, then I'm like, I got to make this decision, even if it's difficult. The next thing I need to know from somebody is where they want to be in 3 to 5 years. Give me the vision of their life. Write the movie script so that I can close my eyes and watch the movie of your life in 3 to 5 years from now. Tell me where you're living. Tell me what your work week looks like. What's your relationship life with your partner, spouse? What's your relationship like with your kids? What vacations do you take? What do you do and what do you not do? What do you guys do in your spare time? What do you not do in your spare time? Who do you associate? Who do you not associate with? What are the core values of your family? Tell me that stuff. I can paint the picture. And now, if I know exactly where your dream destination is, I can give you the step-by-steps to get there, which then show us the activities that you do and don't do. It's all a filter. Again, is this moving us towards that North Star? If yes, carry on. If no, we got to cut that dangerous detour off, because that's where a lot of people bleed their energy. It's where they get their burnout. They're off on dangerous detours that they see, David Goggins talking about, or some other person talking about, and all of a sudden it's like, that looks pretty interesting. And it happens to me all the time too. Like Instagram is a foul, vicious, wonderful, effective thing, Joe Polish once, do you know who Joe Polish is? You ever heard that name? I
don't. No.
Joe Polish is a very well-connected guy. He has this program called Genius Network. There's a lot of real estate guys in there. But Joe Polish once told me, he said, use social media, but don't let social media be used on you. And that's a great framework, right? And it's like, put out your content, serve people, build your business, do that stuff, maybe get some inspiration, but don't let it be used on you negatively where you're chasing other people's dreams. And provided you don't do that, and you can curate your Instagram pretty well by blocking certain things and certain people, and you can use it in a positive way, whereas most people use it in a way where it becomes anxiety inducing. So anyways, those are the things. Like once we get that in your mind, then we know what's your specific definition of success. We build you a path that keeps you on track, that doesn't lead you to burnout, that keeps you consistent. We give you that accountability. We eliminate the things that will drag you down. We do better planning and preparation to make sure that you do the good things. And I think most important is that people need to understand they don't have to be extreme to be extremely successful.
Yeah.
You don't have to be extreme in your habits and routines in order to be extremely successful. Because, I talk about the world's most disciplined man, the person who I think is the real world's most disciplined man in the book. And his name was Charlie Munger. And he lived to 99.9 years old. And he is not the picture of discipline in anybody's mind, right? Old white guy, didn't look like he'd, ever exercised. And in fact, he was proud that he did not exercise the day after he got out of the army. He just didn't do it. Didn't like it. Didn't want to do it. But he was very disciplined because he knew his finish line in life. He knew the race that he wanted to run. He was comfortable in his own skin, which allowed him and Warren Buffett, his partner, to say no to all the trends. Yeah. And they just sat on, they like to say, they sat on their hands and waited for the big softball pitch to come along where it was a no-brainer for them to invest in stuff like Coca-Cola and American Express that made them extremely wealthy. And Charlie Munger, the world's most disciplined man who would never do a cold plunge, never do a hard workout, never work out twice a day, he had everything that a man could want: money, power, and respect. And most men want money, power, and respect, and he had them all by living his own life and not getting too extreme. So I think that the message I'm trying to share with everybody there is we want you to be consistent, but we only need to be consistent in a few things. You don't need to be consistent in a million things like the internet says you have to do. It's just a few things that are really going to be a game changer in your life.
Dude, that's so good. And with that, like I have this habit tracker. I had like 20 different habits on there. And one of them was cold plunge. One was sauna, 8,000 steps a day. Like, take my vitamins, drink my creatine, basically all of the Instagram trends. I was like, I'm going to do all of these every day. My life's going to be better. And I did do it for a week and I did feel better. And I loved it, but it just fell off because it was too much.
Here's the thing is what we need to do is subtract, because those things are good. And that's the whole dark side of discipline. The dark side of discipline is that you can have, 101 things you have to do. And by the time you get them all done, that real important thing that you had to do, the thing that was taking you to your greatness, whether it was writing a book or doing a real estate investing deal or, focusing on improving your marriage or whatever it is, there's no time for that. So you're doing all the good, but you sacrifice the great. And what I truly believe, when you said, I felt better. Well, you probably felt better because you probably stopped doing the bad things that made you feel worse. And
Mm,
I'm a huge believer that there's discipline through subtraction. That's where you find your discipline. So, you can go and do a green juice every morning, but if you drink a bottle of wine at night, which one's going to make a bigger difference if you either continue it or subtract it? It's removing the bottle of wine, removing the bag of chips, removing the 4 Netflix shows, removing going to bed 2 hours late, removing the gossipy friends, the toxic people, removing you from the toxic environments. Let's first get rid of all the balls and chains in your life. And then we can figure out what really will move the needle by adding it to your life. Because that's where I just find that most people are using a lot of disciplined things and nutritional things and good habits, quote unquote,
mhm.
they're just bandages over the, gashed wounds in
Yeah.
their body that, like, if we just solve those, stop, stabbing yourself, you'll be good.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I want to talk a little bit because you've said this word multiple times of alignment, and it
Yeah.
actually ties back to Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett because I actually just read an article with him stepping down his CEO. I think Warren Buffett's 95 if
Yeah.
I'm
94, 95.
90, yeah, and
It's
it
unbelievable.
it
Dairy
it was.
Queen, Dairy Queen and Coca-Cola.
Exactly. Well, and that's what it talked about. And the whole premise of this article was by a longevity doctor. Was like he doesn't do any of the longevity stuff. Like he makes fun of that, but
Right.
he has lived a life aligned for his entire life. He hasn't tried to be somebody that he's not. He's known what he wants to do for his entire life, and a huge part of that contributes to success and happiness and longevity. And so, how do people find alignment in their life?
I think it goes back to that vision and what you want. And
Yeah.
and we've all heard the stories of people who retire and they just wither away. And it's
Mhm.
because there's no vision left. There's no excitement, there's no purpose. And so the vision, going through the vision exercise I write about in the Perfect Day Formula. You can go through a guy named Cameron Herold. He has a great book
Mhm.
called Vivid Vision or Double Double. I forget what it is,
Yeah.
but it's about writing the vision for your business. When you have that, when you have something on the horizon, you are going, you're driven, you're passionate, and you're purposeful. And for
Mhm.
for all, for most of us, it's going to be family is going to be included here, business is going to be there, and faith might be in there as well for some folks of different kinds. And having that stuff will keep you aligned because it will stop you from making the bad decisions that get you off alignment. And there
Mhm.
has to be something to be said for longevity about just not being stressed out and not
Yeah.
chasing other people's lives and not, getting anxious and having high blood pressure because you're angry at something, like getting rid of those things. We all know people that lived a long life that, my wife's grandfather passed away at 92 in 2021. And I mean, again, it's like, did he exercise? No. Did he eat a whole bunch of junk? But was he the jolliest, happiest soul that you'll ever meet? Absolutely. And I'm not saying like he can, just going over to McDonald's
Mhm.
every meal, and as long as you're happy about it, you'll live a great long life. But there are so many factors to the longevity aspect, and a lot of this, you need to have that purpose in your life because when
Mhm.
you are purposeless, man, you can get into a lot of dangerous detours and that misalignment, which causes so much stress, and stress is a killer.
Yeah, that's so good. One of the things that I do almost every day is I go, and this was an exercise that a guy named Rich Fecky, who is a real estate investor, he took us through one time, where I go and I have coffee with myself in 5 years, and so I
That's
sit
great
there and
exercise.
I literally where my dream location. I walk down the driveway, knock on the door, I look around. What does my house look like? Where am I at? Future me answers it. We sit down at the dinner table and we have coffee together and we just talk. We talk about our marriage, our kids, our business, our health. And what that does for me is then it aligns my day where it's like, hey, here a great example of it is I did that Sunday morning. Sunday morning, I did that, and we talked about like my relationship with my kids, and they love me, I love them. We hang out all the time. They want to spend time with me.
Mhm.
And later on that day, I was going to go play golf. And I love golf. That's kind of one of my things that I like to do for me time. And my 7-year-old daughter was like, "Can I come play with you, Daddy?" And my first instinct was, "No, this is my time, and I'm also trying to get better. I don't want to take you." My first instinct was that, but because I had sat down with myself in 5 years and literally talked about how great my relationship was with my daughter Riley, and how we love to do things together and we love to hang out, I said, "Yeah, let's go play golf together." And so we went and we played golf together. She let her drive the golf cart. She helped me caddy, counted my strokes. We only got through 11 holes, but it was the best time of my life. And the only reason I did that was because I have a vision of what my relationship in the future looks like with my daughter. And because of that, I'm making decisions today that align with that person.
I love that story, man. That's
Mhm.
exactly how it's supposed to go, because you were gonna forget 99.9% of the rounds of golf that you
Mhm.
ever play. And you might remember the one time you played at Pebble Beach, and you're going to remember that round with your daughter.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I
And
will
what else
never
do you
forget
want?
that round. Yeah.
What else do you want?
I will never forget that round. That's
Yeah.
that's good. Uh, so tell me this, for somebody who I have extroverted tendencies.
Oh, cool.
I'm seen as a free spirit. Cameron's go with the flow. He loves to, just anything. Like somebody texts me at 8:30 at night, "Hey, you wanna go down to the beach, or you wanna go grab a beer and watch the game," or something like that. I'm always, one, I love that stuff. But two, I pride myself on, like, that's a part of who I am. I just love
Sure.
people and being around people. And so how does somebody implement structure and discipline into a lifestyle like that? I guess, again, this is for me. I'm sorry for the people that are listening. I'm asking questions for myself, but like I I feel like sometimes discipline, waking up at 5:30, and I know we've kind of already covered that you don't have to do that, but how I'm scared sometimes that structure will steal from my hardwiring. Does that make sense at all?
That's a great question. It's a very unique question that I've never been asked before, but there's an answer for it that we can all apply. And you can do that, and you should do that. What you should have is simply the system that, all
Mhm,
right, here's how the day goes if no one texts me. This is how
mhm,
we're going to do it. I'm going to get up at 5:30 or whatever time, and we're going to do this and then do this and this block of time and this block of time, and then it's free time with family, etc. And then if nobody messages me, I go to, I have this nighttime routine that starts at this time, so I get to bed at this time. Great. And then if people message me, here's the next day that I have planned if I'm out until 11:30 at Top Golf or whatever the heck you're going. And you get home, all right, well, tomorrow, not every day has to look the same. And I don't know if it's because we all grew up with our parents, going to a quote 9 to 5 job, that we thought every single day has to look the same. Like every single day, I got to work from 9 to 5. Well,
mhm,
no, in this day and age, so many people can have their own lifestyle design. And so you need to have a day where if I was out till 11:30 at night and I still need to be productive and successful in my business, here's how that schedule is designed. So you have routine and structure.
mhm.
You just have different versions of it.
Yeah.
And then what you need is like, you have that day. Well, and tomorrow I get up at 7:30. And I'm not a huge fan of like varying your wake up time and your bedtime, because those are like kind of like that. If you want to have better sleep, that's almost like the number one thing to do is go to bed at
Yeah.
the same time every night, get up at the same time every night. But if you're going to do this, and because this is life, and this is the life you want to live, and there's a lot of people out there like, my kids go to, they got basketball at 9:30 on some nights, and some nights I can go to bed early. This is helpful to me. You just have to have different plans. You need to have day A, day B, and day C. You need to have those three options. Each one of them is structured and routine. And you might, on a day where a night where you're out till 11:30 and you're going through day B the next day, there's going to be some other sacrifices that you're going to
Mhm,
have to make in order for you to have enjoyed the thing on, day A at night that kept you out late. Well, day B maybe means like you're eating at your desk, you're getting home half an hour later. Okay, great. Make those sacrifices in order to the good, in order to have the great. But you just have those things in place, and there's routine and ritual to them,
mhm.
knowing what outcomes you are after. And
Yeah.
again, the outcomes that we want to achieve in life generally don't need as many things, 19 things in order to achieve those things. There's really just a few needle movers that we have to focus on, are what we call our level 10 problems and level 10 opportunities. Just put all your energy into those. And if you get time for the other things, great, but don't worry about them. So it's that making sure you're not, the phrase we use in the perfect week formula is don't try and stuff 10 pounds potatoes in a 5-pound bag. It's always going to end up in a bad situation.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. Well, we're gonna shift because I want to talk to you a lot about your new book out and mindset and identity. I know we're running out of time as well. But before we do that, I want to take a break and go to our ad sponsor. But one of the things that I don't know if they told you about this on our show, that we donate 100% of the proceeds from any of our ad sponsors to a charity of the guest choosing. And so, what charity would that be for you, Craig?
I think it's going to have to be Shriners. Usually I'd say it's Toys for Tots, but Toys for Tots, you have to go and buy the toys. So I would say Shriners Hospital would be great.
Okay, cool. Perfect. We can do that. Well, let's go to today's show sponsor.
So I know I'm fairly well off financially, right? But did you know I still house hack? Like, that's right. I've got an extra couple units at my house here in Maui, and I decided to actually rent one of them out because, hey, it's like almost $2,000 a month, and I'm an investor, so why not? Do you know the first thing I did when I decided to rent that out? I went to turbotenant.com because there I can advertise the unit, screen for potential tenants, sign the state-specific lease, get automatic rent payments set up, track my income and expenses, and even communicate with my new tenant via the app. It literally made the process so much easier. So whether you've got, one unit or a ton of units, check out turbotenant.com. I love it, and I know you will too. Let them know I sent you.
Let's transition real quick to mindset and identity, because I think one of the things that I've gotten from your books and something that I'm trying to implement in my life is I don't just want to change my habits. I want to actually change my identity, like who I am as a person. And so what would you tell somebody that is stuck in that? Where does that make sense at all? I don't know if I'm making sense with that question.
You are stuck in it. And you've mentioned it before that you're the type of person who's, I go really hard for 30 days. So you believe this. This is a story that you believe in your mind, that you can only do something for a short period of time. And what I was trying to show you there is that, well, no, there's other areas in your life where you're very clear about your mission as being a great father, and you're consistent with it, and look at the decisions you make because of that, right? And it's just that you haven't implemented that same thinking and in the same level of systems, and thus you haven't built the confidence for you to be able to say, yeah, I can do this consistently. So for example, let's just say like somebody says, I can never be on time. If that's your identity, will you ever be on time? Of course not. So what you have to do is you have to build the system. So if you are, oh man, I'm all chronically late for these meetings with other real estate investors or with agents or whatever, when we're going to look at properties, you make a commitment that this week, I'm going to be careful about the number of appointments that I schedule. So, if I schedule 10 in a day, obviously I'm going to be late to one because one's going to run late. So I'm going to schedule fewer, and I'm going to set up a system. If the meeting is at 2:00, there's going to be an alarm going off at 1:00, at 1:30, and 1:45. It's a 10-minute drive. So I have to be out of here at 1:45. I have to start thinking about this at 1:00, winding down whatever I'm doing. 1:30, the alarm goes off and I better get moving. And what you should then also implement is an accountability. At 1:30, you have to text somebody and you have to say, I will make sure I'm leaving for this meeting. I will not be late. Or you can even text the person and say, hey, I'm leaving for the thing now. I'll be there. And that system allows you to be successful. And when you repeatedly have success, you build confidence. And when you build confidence, now you can start to shift your self-talk, which is huge, and say, I can be on time. I'm not always late. I can be on time. And next you go from I can be on time, and next thing you get some earlies in. I can be early. I'm always on time. And now that is the shift, and that is the change in your identity. And once you believe that, like I personally believe, I can never actually be late. Like I physically cannot be late. I could say I'm going to meet you somewhere and be like, you know what, I'm going to cruise around here so I can be casually late. I will still somehow show up 5 minutes early. Like maybe my watch was all messed up. Like I can go through life. I just can't be late. Can't be late. And it's because I've built systems that get me there, but also my personality. But I really, truly believe that. And so I don't need any of these systems anymore, because you graduate from systems to identity after you've built enough confidence through your actions. And we can do that with anything, because anything is a learnable skill. There's people listening to this who were once said, I was no good at sales. And then they became good at sales. And now they believe they're great at sales. And there's lots of stories like that about every trait that you have ever come across in life, from losing weight to sales to being on time. Everything's a learnable skill. We can all do it. We build the systems, we build the confidence, we change the identity. And that, if it doesn't work for you, if you're not going to apply this, please pass that on to your kids.
Yeah.
Because my goodness, good parenting can do so much for kids when you give them the systems and the identity and the confidence. Like, that's what we are here to do. And I mean, that's the way to do it.
That is, even as you're talking, that's so good. Cause I'm thinking of all the things I say that I'm not good at, or I can't
catch yourself. Catch yourself.
And it, like, even with the waking up early, like, so people in real estate, there's this term, and you guys might use it as well, where it's like a conference hangover. People go to a conference, and then on the couple days afterwards, they're so burnt out.
Sure.
For me, because I have extroverted tendencies, and I get to go and speak at conferences and attend quite a bit of conferences, I love those things. Like, I can be up at 6 a.m. for the group workout, go to breakfast with everybody, 9 till 7,
You're a unicorn.
just hanging out. Yeah, going to dinner.
That's
and then
great.
I get back from those and I'm energized. I'm ready. Like, I can work 20 hours a day and I love it. And so it's not that I'm in my day-to-day life, I can't do things. It's just that there are things that aren't bringing me life, I guess.
Sure.
If that makes sense. And so it's really, like, even as you're talking, that I can do it. I just have to set up my day in a way that I get energy. And
yes,
so
exactly. And so the design, the thinking then is like, do I need to work from a coffee shop? Is that enough? Like, will that give me the energy? And you have to experiment with some things. Like, maybe that will work, or maybe that's just distracting, or maybe you just need to schedule more meetings, or maybe you need to, from 1 till 2 every day, you just outbound dial to friends and catch up with. Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
There's certain things that you can implement based on the self-reflection and introspection that you have done, that identify the areas of energy growth for you and that makes you happy. And you can incorporate them into the day that will then, help you through some of the other stuff that has to be done that doesn't necessarily light you up. But that's really cool.
That's, yeah. Well, in talking about that, I believe you do talk about it in your book, The Perfect Week Formula, where it talks about kind of coming up with like an energy calculator, I believe. Is that in this book, or is it?
I don't think it's in that one. I'm
in
not
that
sure.
book. I know you talk about, actually, I have it opened up here, like your daily time journal.
Yeah,
And
we have that.
Yes. And so one of the things that I did with this, which it's not filled out in here because I used a Google sheet, and I'd done it before, but it was in hour-long time blocks. And I love how you have it in 20-minute time blocks, because an hour's too much time, where it's like,
Right, you can do so many things.
Exactly. And so I actually was super dedicated going through this, and I
Cool.
tracked it for 2 weeks of, like, every 20 minutes, what am I doing for 2 weeks? And then I went through with a highlighter, and I was like, hey, what are the things that I'm doing that I can tell bring me energy? And what are things that I'm doing that take away energy? What are the things that I have to do, even if they do bring away energy or take away energy? And it was so helpful to me. And so, like, what can you talk about that a little bit for people that are listening?
Absolutely, because there's a lot of things in our life that we can either automate, delegate, or eliminate. And there's things that we are doing that are not our job, things that are distracting to us, that take us off on dangerous detours, and things that, as you said, drain our energy. And if you don't do the self-reflection, introspection, as most people don't do, like, most people just don't reflect back on their day. They don't make the connection, the cause and effect between, the fact that I went to Burger King at lunch and I was tired an hour later. Like, most people go through life and never figure that out. And they go through their work days. Oh, I do this. And, oh man, I don't know, today sucked, but this is what I did. Well, it's because you did that, these certain things. And they can either be delegated to somebody else. Certainly in this day and age of Upwork and Fiverr, you can find virtual people to do them. Some of the things don't need to be done at all. And so you need to just simply also ruthlessly evaluate, like, is there any value to some of the things that I'm doing? And so when you go through this checklist of figuring out what you're doing every day at a certain time, how you're feeling when you're doing it, then you can either start to shift things around in your day, like, oh, maybe I'll move this to the afternoon. It's kind of a lower energy activity, and I'll move something that I'm doing around lunchtime to earlier in the day. I'm going to be more productive. And then also identifying the time of day where you're really in your flow and I call it magic time. Some people call it deep work, whatever it is, you remove the distractions and you can really get stuff done. If you really align your highest mental activity with your toughest mental task, you'll get so much further ahead on it. And now just by reshaping your days, all of a sudden you're being more productive because you have more energy. You're getting rid of the stuff that doesn't matter, and you're moving the fluff to a fluffier time of the day where you don't have much energy. And just simple changes like that can make a dramatic difference in what you get done every day, week, month, and in the year.
That's good. That's the whole premise of the level 10 effort for level 10 problems that you have in your most recent book, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody's got big problems in their life. Most people don't put big energy into their big problems in life, and it's because they're intimidating, they're scary. It's difficult discussions with our relationships or with our business partners or with other investors or with, a contractor or something. Oh man, I don't want to have this conversation. So they don't have the conversation, and the molehill becomes a mountain. And the next thing you know, these level 10 problems have, destroyed some area of our life. And what most people are doing is they're going and putting their great energy into things that don't matter. And that mismatch, that misalignment, there's that magic word, causes us a lot of problems. We got to rip the bandage off, and we got to go after our level 10 problems, and we got to sort that stuff out so that we can, move on to the next problem on the list. And when you have the courage to do that, that's when your life really starts to shift.
Love that. Well, I got two more questions and I want to move to the end. But
absolutely.
The first one would be talking a little bit about the dark side of discipline. And you talk a lot about burnout. And I think a lot of people, they don't catch burnout until it's almost too late sometimes. And so what does burnout look like in someone at the beginning stages who's trying to do it all? And how do you prevent that?
Well, the burnout in the person who's trying to do it all is, they're overwhelmed. They use a phrase like, I feel like my hair is on fire. I'm spinning too many plates. I'm wearing too many hats. We hear that all the time in people that come through, watch our videos and apply to work with us. Those are like the phrases we see in every application. And if you're feeling like that, it's going to end poorly. Eventually it's going to lead to you working, too many hours a day. Relationships will suffer, health will suffer, and whatever you describe as burnout, you will experience it, because burnout's kind of a generic phrase that people can apply to a lot of things. So if you're starting to, even resent the people on your team or the work that you do or going to work, or, man, something has to change. So that's the early signs of it.
Okay. And then, so what for somebody, like speak to somebody in the audience right now who is just getting into real estate or has their own real estate business or whatever. It might not be real estate, just their own business. What you've coached so many 7+ figure entrepreneurs, and what early boundaries do those people put in place to prevent burnout?
Yeah. So I say that the 5 deadliest words for the entrepreneur: I will do it myself. Because that's where there's no trust. Like, you don't trust people. If you say, oh, I just don't trust people on my team, well, that's really a fault of the leadership. Why don't you trust somebody on your team? Did you hire the wrong person? Have you not given them the skill set training? Have you not downloaded the vision of the company to them? What is it about it? And why are you employing somebody that you don't trust? So there needs to be that communication. So we spend a lot of time on player agreements with team members. And, even if somebody's not on your team, if you're working with like real estate contractors, there's contractors, building your house or, doing the renovations and stuff like that. There must be so much clarity on the expectations. And I always joke with people when somebody's like saying they're going to build a software or something, I'm like, oh yeah, that's like real estate or like renovations, man. It's gonna be 3 times as long, 3 times as expensive, because I've seen it happen a million times. And that's because there isn't that clarity of who does what by when, of, this is the timeline, this is the deadline, this is the budget. Do you agree upon this? I agree upon this. And like everybody on the same page. And that's what has to be done in order for you to not go down the rabbit hole of doing it all yourself. And the problem is that people don't know about the alternatives to doing it themselves. They think that, there's I either do it myself or I hire somebody for $80,000 a year. Well, no, you can go to Fiverr, Upwork, Assistantly for a lot of your virtual work that can be done by anybody anywhere in the world. And you don't have to hire people full time. You can hire people for as little as 5 hours a week at $20 an hour. It's not $80,000 that you have to throw up right up front. And that's where people get hung up on that stuff. And so they never delegate and they end up doing everything themselves. And of course, you end up with a bottleneck and a ceiling on that. So getting outside that mentality, because what people need to do is say no more often and allow themselves to just focus on where you are best, like your zone of genius, your unique ability.
That's good. That's great. Well, hey, final question, then we're going to move to the ending. But you've been on hundreds, if not thousands of podcasts and YouTube videos. And so I've got a question that's going to put you on the spot a little bit. But
Okay.
what is a question that nobody ever asks you that you wish that they would?
Nobody's ever asked me about my father and, what, so my father was an alcoholic for 30 years. And the reason why I say this is because I once interviewed Ed Milet and I asked him, what got your father to stop drinking? And he said, nobody ever asked me that question. So the first thing that came to my mind is that, I tell people that my dad was an alcoholic for 30 years. He died at the age of 69, almost 20 years ago. Way too early for a guy like that. Like, what did you learn through that? Like nobody ever has asked me, like, what impact did that have on you and what did you learn from it? And I think that there's a few things in there that I could probably answer.
I would love to hear.
Okay. So first of all, from what I understand is that the children of alcoholics seek control. I don't know if that's true. I think I just read it once. Maybe it was, maybe it's scientifically proven. I don't know. But because when your parent is an alcoholic, it's chaos. And so if you're in a world of chaos, you seek to control what you can, which is, one of the philosophies in my first book, The Perfect Day Formula, control what you can. And this is actually a philosophy of Stoic philosophy, or a component of Stoic philosophy, which is like, you can't control the external, so you can only control your thoughts, words, and deeds. And so I think that led to me creating systems, even in high school to deal with his behavior and to avoid his behavior, but to deal with it when I had to, and to have all these kind of things lined up, but also to put structure and routine. Like I went to school, then I went to my after school job, then I went to the YMCA and worked out, and then I played video games. Like that was my day for all of high school. And like most kids just went home and watched TV, but I had like all these other things lined up, and I was bodybuilding when I was in high school because I could control that, and it got me out of the house. So I think that helped me there. And then just seeing my dad, like, even though he's an alcoholic, he got up at like 5:30 in the morning and worked every day, and he went right to work. And that was one of the things that helped me create this Millionaire Morning Routine course. And we sold, 100,000 copies of it. And it's essentially just stop doing all the other stuff and just get up and go to work as soon as you possibly can. And there's some systems that we put in there, but most people's problems in life would be solved if they just got up and hit that level 10 problem first thing in the morning, rather than procrastinating on it.
That's. Have you seen in your life where you want structure, you want control? Have you seen that impact your life negatively anywhere?
Yeah, totally. I went way too far with it. So the dark side of discipline includes my personal story of being too disciplined, because you have to live the book in order to write the book. And, I had a 1,000-day workout streak, that was stupid. It's like I sacrificed social outings. I sacrificed business events because I had to do my workout. I got to get up early tomorrow and do my workout. It was stupid. It was pointless. There's no gold medals for 1,000 workouts in a row. And I missed out on things. And so I've took my structure and routine too far, swung the pendulum too far, but I went too far in order to know what everybody else needs to have success without going to extremes.
Oh, that's great. Do you have a hard stop?
No, I'm good.
Oh, you're good? Okay.
I got to put my kids to sleep, I think, in about 15 minutes, but because they just got home.
Awesome. We can finish it up here quick, but I did want to ask, just because you brought up parenting so many times, and that is, to me, the greatest thing that I will ever do is raise my kids. I've got 3 and I've got 2 more on the way. It's my favorite thing in the world. I know that you said that you have 3 right now, and you're kind of in the thick of it with some young ones.
Three kids, 3, 1.5, almost 2, and then almost 1.
That is incredible.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
So
it's amazing to watch them interact.
What are some ways that you are going to raise them to kind of abide by this structure in this system?
So we have 5 core values, my wife and I, for our family. You know, it's love, honesty, freedom, personal responsibility, and independent thinking. And so of those, you know, we have lived our lives for their freedom. We actually had our kids in Mexico. We're Canadian. We had our kids in Mexico. So we gave them a second passport. That's like the first gift we ever gave them. And so they have more freedom by having 2 passports. So, you know, that comes through. Love comes through to them. You know, the honesty part comes through to, you know, we teach that every day. But it's the independent thinking that I believe is going to be the greatest gift that we can give them. You know, not to trust everything that people say, even if I say something. I mean, eventually you gotta question everything. And, you know, that may lead to some hard, challenging conversations when they're teenagers and as they grow up. But that's what's right, I think, because, you know, my wife and I both like to think we're fairly independent thinkers. And that is a gift that if you can give to your kids, I think it will serve them, oh man, as well as almost any gift that you could possibly give them.
That's so good. That's so good. And what's best piece of parenting advice you've ever heard?
I got a couple. So the guy who first called me the world's most disciplined man is a guy named Ed O'Keefe from Chicago, and he's been a longtime friend of mine. And when he found out I was having my first child, he said, "You can be tired, and your wife can be tired, but you can't be tired at the same time." And I thought, oh, that sounds pretty good. And then once you get into it, you're like, oh, that is good. Because, you know, when you're both tired, your stress tolerance window has collapsed, and one little thing can set people off. So what my wife and I did was we thought about our sleeping schedules. And I'm the type of person that if I can go to bed really early and get a few hours of sleep before midnight, I can be up at 1:30 or 2 and be fine. And it sounds kind of weird, you know, but if I sleep from 8 to 1, I'm pretty good. She needs a little bit more sleep. So she would stay up with the baby at first, on the nights we didn't have a night nurse, which is another thing I'll get to in a second. And she would stay up, and then I, you know, once the baby woke up after 1 or 1:30, you know, daddy daycare. And I was still able to do a lot of my work because, you know, I get the kid back to sleep from 3 to 6, and then I would work. So that was good. Then behaviors are caught, not taught, is 100% true. You can tell your kids to do this, this, and this, but, you know, they hear you say something. Like I said, holy cow the other night. Unfortunately, neither my wife or I swear, but, you know, I said, holy cow the other night. Sure enough, 3 minutes later, our 3-year-old is saying, holy cow. You know, doesn't know what it means, but is saying it because I said, holy cow. So behaviors are caught, not taught. And then the last thing I'll say is just buy back your, you know, for every man out there, buy back your wife's time. And if you're in a tough financial situation, even 3 or 4 hours, a couple times per week with a babysitter or, you know, call it a nanny, whatever. You know, we're fortunate. We have nannies during the daytime. And when my wife, you know, gave birth and we had our babies for the first 3 months, we had a night nurse overnight, several nights per week, almost most nights per week. So it allowed her to sleep, because the duty of a mom is it's hard. You know, plus you know, she had to have an emergency C-section and then subsequent C-sections that has a recovery component to it. And, you know, if she had to have the baby 24 hours a day, where's she going to do her recovery time and her exercises and stuff like that? So buy back your wife's time is another one.
Perfect. I love that. That was one of the best things that we have done as a family, is we hired on a full-time house assistant. And so cost us, I think it was $3,000 a month is what we paid them. And which was, you know, we're in a fortunate enough position to where we could do that. And I know not everybody is, but
do what you can though.
Yes. Well, and
even if it means selling a bunch of stuff in your cluttered up garage or, you know, whatever, you got to do it.
It was so life-changing for even my wife and I's relationship, because one of the things that we found is like we work and then we're on kid duty, which is
Sure.
a blast. And then we get done with that and it's 8 o'clock at night and the house is a mess and we want it to be reset. And so we would reset the house and now it's 9:30, 10 o'clock and we don't get any time for each other. And a lot of times we are trying to pick up while the kids are there and we don't get quality time with our kids. And so we hired a house assistant. We purposely called him a house assistant and not a nanny because we were like, your job is to take care of the house, which felt
Yeah.
weird at first. Like I felt weird saying that, but that way my wife and I get to spend quality time together and we get to spend quality time with our family versus always worrying about, are the dishes clean? Is laundry
Sure.
done? Is the house picked up? And it changed our life. It in such a healthy way. So
Yeah.
I
So
love
we
that.
we hired the two things I want to add here is that we hired. Well, we lived in Mexico for a long time, so obviously the nannies spoke Spanish. But even when we moved back to Vancouver, we only hired Spanish-speaking nannies. So our 3-year-old is bilingual and
That's amazing.
switches. It's
That's for the
like
freedom
one
that
of the
you're talking
coolest things
about.
to watch.
Yeah.
So cool. But then also, my wife and I go to bed really like ridiculously early after we put our kids to bed, and we eat dinner ridiculously early at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
And our nannies are there until 5. And so every night in our own house, my wife and I have a 20-minute dinner date from 4
That's-
until 4:20. And then when the nannies leave, then we feed our kids and we eat with them. But we have that 20 minutes every day,
It's
just like what
incredible.
you had set
Yeah.
up. And so it is very valuable.
That's incredible. Yeah, ours was a little bit different where it's because we stay up later than you guys, I'm
Yeah,
assuming, but it
obviously.
was once the kids go to bed, we bought back an hour of time where we could essentially just sit there and hang out and get
Mhm.
to be like get to talk just us two without kids, without business, and it was so life-giving for us. But
Yeah.
well, perfect. Well, hey, I want to move to the closing segment of this. And have had a blast talking with you, and we're not done yet. So I've got a couple just rapid fire questions for you, and
Absolutely.
then we'll wrap up. And so the first thing I want to go to is what we call the 3-2-1 pivot. And the first question I want to ask you: what are 3 books that have changed the direction of your life?
So the first one is The Art of Living by Sharon LaBelle. It is a tiny little, what I call a daily reader, and it is the translation of Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher's main teachings. So I've never read like a long Stoic philosophy book, but I've read this Art of Living one over and over and over again. It was life-changing for me. It helped me understand that I couldn't control the externals, so don't get mad. If it's raining, traffic, you just can't control their people. And that was really helpful. The second one is Relentless by Tim Grover. So when I made that transition that I mentioned earlier, where I shut down the fitness business, started the coaching business, 2016 was a rough year. And I would read 3 pages of Relentless every morning, and I would be ready to run through a wall. So that was the second one. And then the third one, I'm going to just say my Perfect Day Formula book, because I'm a bookworm. I've always wanted to write a book. I put what I believe is timeless lessons into that book. And I've gotten feedback. Like Ed Mylett recommended that book before I'd ever even heard of Ed Mylett. On his very first Ed Mylett podcast, he told like, go get Perfect Day Formula by Ballantyne. He didn't even say the first name. He just said Ballantyne. And so that book changed my life in a lot of ways.
Well, just a shout out to that book and your Perfect Week Formula. I was asked this question. I was on a podcast not that long ago, and I said the Perfect Day Formula and Perfect Week Formula because those were such great books. So for anybody listening to this, go check those out. Amazing. So who are 2 people that have changed the direction of your life?
Yeah. First one is Bedros Keuilian. I've mentioned him before. He's written a book called Man Up. And he mentions, how I helped him in that book with his personal discipline and stuff like that. But he's been a coach and a mentor to me, and also one of my best friends, very successful entrepreneur. And then a guy named Mark Ford. So Mark Ford is the guy who I bought early to Rise, is the company that I own now. Mark Ford wrote his, just to make things confusing, Mark Ford wrote his books under the name Michael Masterson and wrote a book called Ready, Fire, Aim, which if you go to like the top entrepreneurs in the online space, every single one will say Ready, Fire, Aim is in their top 5.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. And then last question on this little segment is, what is one quote that has changed the direction of your life?
It's a quote from me. Everything in life is easier when you know more good people. Everything
That's
in life
good.
is easier when you know more good people. So it's a little spin off the Jim Rohn quote, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But 90% of the money that I've ever made is because I've known good people who have shown me the way or I've partnered with them. When I was in the best shape of my life, it was because I had great training partners. And when I wanted to meet my wife, I asked good people to make an introduction. And that led me to meeting my wife and having her kids. Everything in life is easier when you know more good people. And that, in the real estate world, for sure.
Oh my gosh, it's the most important thing is knowing good people, being well connected, and part of that's such a personal responsibility because they're not going to want to work with you if you aren't a good person, and
Yeah,
so it's also a
exactly.
litmus test of am I a good person? Am I doing the right things? And so that's so good. And even when we tie back to like the discipline and the structure, one of the things that Better Life is so passionate about is accountability. Like we all know how to get what we want. We just don't have the accountability and the people holding us responsible to getting there. And
Mhm.
so when you can surround yourself with good people that are pushing you and encouraging you and holding you accountable, it's life changing. So awesome. Last little segment, and we're gonna go past, present, future. And so we're gonna look at your past first. So if you could go back to 20-year-old Craig, is he's training to become a NHL personal trainer. What advice would you give to that 20-year-old
Yeah.
person?
First thing is learn face to face, nose to nose, toes to toe selling. That
Oh,
skill set, man. If you're 20 years old and you have that, you can write your own ticket. Number 2 is stop drinking. So binge drinking did not serve me. And number 3 is take up Brazilian jiu jitsu.
okay. Why Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
Okay, so I started at 46. It's not an old man sport. You need to start when your body's not already beat up. But when I started and I posted on Instagram, I've never had so much outpouring from complete strangers inviting me to the next time I'm in their city to come and roll with them. And so the community aspect of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like, first of all, it's a very valuable skill set.
Mhm.
And then, it's fitness. And I want my kids to do this because it's going to be valuable for them. It's going to help them build confidence. But the community aspect is fantastic. I just think it was really cool.
That's so tell me this. This is interesting because we get to interview and I get to be around a lot of really successful people, and almost every successful person that I know, especially if they're a man, they either do Brazilian jiu jitsu or they do ultra marathons. Why do you think that is?
Well, the ultra marathons, I think you just get a lot of time to think.
Mhm,
I don't know. It's not attractive to me, but
mhm.
because I'm already too skinny. If I started running, like,
Yeah,
I'd be skin and bones. So it's not my jam. But the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is mental chess, or is
yeah,
physical chess. Like, when you're doing it, the person moves an inch and your brain starts thinking, how am I going to, and then you do this move and then I'm going to sweep him and then I'm on top. And then now he's going to be, he's going to make this move. And then you're like on the next move. And it's really mentally challenging in addition to physically challenging. And I'm sure most martial arts are, but this one, man, it was just, it's, it's really great that way.
yeah. That's what I've heard is like you're always thinking three moves ahead, 5 moves ahead. I do this, they do that. I
Yeah,
haven't done it personally, but everybody I talk to does it, and they absolutely love it. They speak so highly of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So um,
absolutely.
let's go present. What's something you've done recently that has created a better life for you and for your family?
Well, I think buying back my wife's time has been
Yeah.
huge. And so it allows her to do some of her work. It allows her to take care of herself. It allows her to deal with, the stuff from the C-sections, and it allows her to spend the quality time with kids. They were out today doing, on a little adventure, and, she's able to homeschool them and,
Awesome.
starting homeschooling with them. And if she was, in charge of taking care of the house and all that sort of stuff and putting them all to sleep and that sort of thing, it would be overwhelming on her.
Mhm,
So I think that is because I buy back my time all the time,
mhm.
and if I'm not going to buy back her time, eventually, you know,
Yeah.
both our time is going to be wasted.
Yeah, that's good. All right. And then last question. I can tell. you care deeply about your kids. And so someday, hopefully way in the future, you're gonna pass away, and your kids are gonna get up and they're gonna talk about you as a father and as a human being. And what do you want your family, what do you want your kids to say about you in that moment?
I would like them to just say that I gave them the opportunity to, they won't say this, but what I want them to have is an environment in which they can flourish. So I want them to
Mm,
feel like, they were safe, they were understood, that we cared, that we taught them how to be confident people and go out in the world and do what they want. And I think a lot of problems and a lot of misbehavior comes from people's lack of confidence. And so because they don't have confidence, and this is what got me into binge drinking, is I didn't have confidence. And so therefore it was substance abuse and misbehaving. And
mhm.
if I had been taught how to be a confident, mature person at a younger age, I
Yeah.
could have done a lot better with my life and avoided a lot of wasted time and stuff like that. So I think if they say that, my parents and my father allowed me to become a confident person, that'll be really wonderful, because then they'll have made the right decisions.
Love that. Absolutely love that. All right. What are you excited about? What's coming up in the future that you're excited about?
So I'm turning 50 this year. So we're
All
going,
right.
we were going to go to Hawaii, for our
Oh,
fit
you
for
should
the,
have.
but then my wife is like really into points. And so she found this like wicked deal in Cabo. And, so we're going to go to Cabo for my 50th, but we're still planning to go to Hawaii later this year. So
Hey.
we travel. We're going to, um, I had a lot of negative self-talk about it, but we've had enough travel where, we're just, yeah, sure, there's going to be some difficulties, but we're going to be that family that travels a lot,
I love it.
even at
Well, when
young
you're
age.
out here, let us know, because we'd love
Absolutely.
to take you guys out to dinner or something like that.
Thank you.
So it'd be a blast. And then, where can everybody that's listening, where can they find you? Where can they find your books? Learn more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the newest book, actually all the books are on Amazon,
Hmm.
and, just get the books on Amazon. Start with The Dark Side of Discipline. That's the newest book. And then hit me up on Instagram at Real Craig Valentine, or on LinkedIn as well. Or I'm old school. You can email me. I love email. I love it, because I'm an introverted type of person. So Craig at CraigValentine.com.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This was so good, so valuable. I feel like I
You got some
hugged
coaching.
the mic, and yes, exactly. It was more for me than anybody. But thank you so much. It was a blast getting to talk with you, Craig.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks for tuning into another episode of the Better Life Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this show and got some valuable insights to help you lead a better life for you and your family. Now, hey, if you found value in this episode, please consider subscribing here to our YouTube channel, and let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. I mean, your feedback actually helps us improve the show and reach more people with that message of living that better life. So be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And hey, before I go, this show and this channel is all about the habits, actions, beliefs, and strategies that give you a better life. But in case you're interested and you want to know my opinion on what it takes to live not just the better life, but the best life ever from like a spiritual and faith standpoint, check out abetterlife.com/bestlife. Thank you again for listening and watching. We'll see you next time on the Better Life Podcast.